There's players like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, and LeBron James that have played basketball their entire life. But starting at an early age isn't a requirement for making it to the NBA, because there's been a lot of players over the years that have started pretty late, whether it was just a couple years before playing college basketball and then making it to the NBA, or playing basketball for the first time while they were already in college. Today, we're looking at 8 of these instances. 8 players that started playing basketball a lot later than most other players, and almost too late. Starting first, number 8. Joellen Bead. To think that a guy that's already showing flashes of dominance and looks like he'll be one of the best in the league one day only started playing basketball a little over 6 years ago in 2010 is pretty insane. Joel's first ever time playing basketball was when he was 15 years old. In early 2011, he was invited to attend Luke Mute's camp in Cameroon, Africa, only because he was 7 feet tall. Luke found out that Joel had potential because at the camp, after only ever playing for a few months, he was making moves that players couldn't make until they had been playing for years. So Mute convinced Joel's dad to let him move to America to play basketball in 2011. When he got there though, 7-foot Joel Embiid rode the bench on a JV basketball team. So he got some help transferring to a better school in 2012, and that's when his career took off. He modeled his game after Hakeem Olajuwon, and even though he still wasn't that great of a player, college and NBA scouts knew he had potential. So after only playing basketball for 2 years, Joel ended up going to Kansas in 2013, and 1 year later would make it to the NBA at 20 years old. So within 6 years time, Joel Embiid first picked up a basketball, moved to America, played for a major college, and will pretty soon be an NBA All-Star. Can you just imagine how good he'd be if he'd been training since he was 5 or 6? And just imagine how much better he's gonna get now when he has more experience. Number 7. Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman technically started playing basketball in high school and actually made his high school team, but the rumor, confirmed by Dennis, was that he was so bad he couldn't even hit a layup. So he was always benched or cut from the team. In high school, he had no confidence and graduated at only 5 foot 6 inches tall. And I've spoken about this in my other videos. After Rodman graduated, he worked as a janitor until one day he grew to be 6 foot 7 inches tall at 21 years old. So that's when he went to a local college and actually started to play basketball pretty well. He played in high school, but if you can't even hit a layup, I don't think that counts. So he didn't really start playing until 1983 in his first year in college. And then he was taken by the Detroit Pistons in the 1986 draft. So after really only playing basketball for 3 years, Dennis Rodman was good enough to make it to the NBA. And I think it's safe to say that he went from a not so bright future to being one of the luckiest guys on the planet with his growth spurt. Number 6. Hakeem Olajuwon. Hakeem Olajuwon's favorite sports up until he was 16 years old were handball and soccer. He said that the first time he ever touched a basketball at 16, he knew that was his life now and he didn't care for any other sports anymore. By the time he was 17, he was 6 foot 10 inches tall and led his high school team to a national championship in Nigeria. And by 18, his coach convinced him to come to the United States to try to make the NBA one day. After joining the University of Houston and training with Moses Malone, Hakeem became one of the best college players in the country and was taken first overall in the 1984 draft, only 5 years after trying out basketball for the first time. And by his 6th year of ever playing basketball, he was already an NBA All-Star. Number 5. Dikembe Mutombo. Dikembe has an insane story of how he started playing basketball, but it's not even the craziest one on this list. When he was growing up, he was always the tallest kid in school by far and was just about 7 feet tall in high school. Up until he was 17, his favorite sports were martial arts and soccer. He had never even tried basketball, until one day his older brother brought him to a court hoping he'd like it. His first time ever playing, he busted his chin and told his brother he was never coming back. But the next day his brother made him play again, and Dikembe slowly fell in love with the game. He started playing for the Zaire national team and playing games all across Africa until he eventually ended up getting a scholarship to Georgetown University. The coaches there saw a huge potential for Mutombo, but his only true reason for accepting the scholarship to Georgetown was so he could use it to become a doctor. He sat on the bench for most of his first 2 seasons, backing up Alonzo Mourning, but when they started to play at the same time was when they became dominant. So only after 6 years of playing basketball ever, Dikembe was a starter for Georgetown University, and after only 8 years, he was drafted 4th overall into the NBA at 25 years old. Number 4. Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan was born on the Virgin Islands and was always an athlete as a kid, but not in basketball. His dream as a teenager was to be an Olympic swimmer and make the 1992 Olympics. But then Hurricane Hugo rolled up and destroyed the island's only Olympic-sized swimming pool. So his only other choice was to practice swimming in the ocean. But since old Timmy was scared of sharks, that ended pretty quickly. So at 15 years old in 9th grade, he decided to give up on swimming and give basketball a try. And he was always tall, so that helped him pick up the game pretty easy. Only 3 years after picking up a basketball, he was averaging 25 points a game as a senior in high school. Then he'd average 16 points, 12 rebounds, and 3 blocks a game through his 4 years at Wake Forest. In just 7 years after playing his first competitive game of basketball ever, Tim Duncan was taken with the first overall pick in the 1997 NBA draft. So it's safe to say old Timmy was a natural at the game and picked it up pretty quickly. Number 3. Michael Olowokandi. The Candyman was born in Nigeria and moved to England with his family when he was 3. Like a true Englishman, he grew up playing rugby, soccer, track, cricket, and field hockey. He'd go on and finish up high school and was looking up colleges for a mechanical engineering school in America. He called the first school he could find to find out about the degree, and when he mentioned he was 7 feet tall, they told him he should join their college and come play basketball while he was at it. And he did just that. He played there for 3 years, and in his 3rd year there, and his 3rd year ever playing competitive basketball, with never playing basketball in high school, he averaged 22 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 blocks a game in college. 3 years into ever playing the game, he was taken with the first overall pick in the NBA draft by the Los Angeles Clippers as a project for the team. And there's not too much more to say about him after that because, well, you know, he sucked. Number 2. Giannis Antetokounmpo. Giannis as a kid played soccer like his dad and his older brother, but he had no interest in basketball. But at 13 years old, a youth basketball coach spotted him playing soccer and knew he'd be a great fit for basketball because of his size and character. Now, 13 isn't all too old to start playing basketball, but for the fact that where he's at now is what puts him on the list. That coach promised to find Giannis' parents a job if him and his brother would come play for the team. They did, and Giannis was a natural. By 15 years old, he was playing on the youth team of the Greek A2 League, which is the 2nd tier of professional basketball in Greece. 3 years after that, at 18 years old, he made the senior team. And his play there was so impressive, videos of him got sent around the NBA, and scouts like Danny Ainge came to watch him play. It was a little strange that someone not even playing in the highest league in Greece. But the same happened to Dirk in Germany, someone who could have made this list too, but didn't. But anyways, in 2013, Giannis Antetokounmpo was taken 15th overall in the NBA draft, only 5 years after playing the game of basketball for the first time, thanks to that one youth coach. He started late, so he's still learning, but just imagine where he'd be right now if he took up basketball as a kid instead of soccer. And number 1, Mark Eaton. The list is in no order, but I definitely saved the most insane story for last. Mark Eaton was always tall as a kid, but instead of playing basketball, he liked to play water polo. He did that in his free time, and he eventually graduated high school and the Arizona Automotive Institute to become a mechanic. 3 years later, at 22 years old, Mark was 7'4". Tom Lubin, who was an assistant coach at a local junior college, stopped by to get his car fixed and saw Eaton working there. He talked Mark into coming to try out for the basketball team. He played 1 season at Cypress Junior College, averaging 14 points a game before being drafted 107th overall by the Suns. But instead, he wanted to keep going to college. But when he transferred to UCLA, he only averaged 1 point and 2 rebounds a game before finishing up the rest of his 4 years at UCLA. So now, no surprise, no NBA teams wanted him. Except for the Utah Jazz, because they said you can't teach height. And they were right, because look at him, he's huge. So they risked it for the biscuit, and at 25 years old, Mark Eaton had never played basketball as a kid, or in high school, or until 22 years old, and made the NBA after only 4 years of ever playing. He did turn out to be a dominant defender in the 80s, and one of the best shot blockers in NBA history. So the Jazz's risk paid off. So I think we've learned a couple of things from this video. If you're near 7 feet tall, no matter what sport you enjoy playing, even if you hate basketball, give it a try because you might make the NBA one day. And the other thing, Hakeem, Dikembe, and Joellen were discovered in Africa, but just imagine if no scouts flew out to Africa and ever found them. Think about how many people through the years that were born in Africa or these underdeveloped countries that might have been 7 feet tall, that could have been some of the greatest NBA players we've ever seen, but they just never got discovered. I'm sure there's probably a few cases like that, and there'll probably be a few more in the future. But yeah, so if you're watching this right now and you're 7 feet tall, or in a couple of years you grow to be 7 feet tall, it's never too late to give basketball a try. But as always, thank you for watching. Make sure to check out my other videos, like and subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you next video.